I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we delve into the poetic world of Leland William Howard with his remarkable collection called Adore a Bell. Spanning over 40 years of his life, this anthology takes readers on a journey through lyrical verses, heartfelt elegies, and reflections on time, art, and human connection. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Brookside Press for helping us put him in the spotlight today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing this beautiful book. The links are below the interview. Leland, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
You're very welcome, and thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for inviting me. This is a first for me. Thank you.
Well, I'm very, very happy to have you on the show and delighted, as a matter of fact. This is a beautiful collection of poetry that you compiled over 40 years worth of work for this edition. Did you ever think these verses would be published? Were you writing them for your private purposes? Did you envision them in a book someday? Tell us a little bit about how this book came to be.
I really wrote them as they were born of the moment. I had no projected plans for publication, and certainly no one is more surprised than I am, Mr. Crawford, that these poems actually are in a volume, collected, compiled, because I did them basically when I was moved in my private moments to pen these poems, and I would put them aside. I'd put them in a drawer. I would put them somewhere else in a box. I didn't have any other plans for them, but as time moves on and things change, somehow it was meant to come. It was meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. These were poems that were 40 years in the making and 40 years waiting to be published. We're happy that they're published now and that you're sharing them with the world. Tell us about the title, Adore a Bell.
Adore a Bell was really a title that was suggested by one of the members of a team that Michael Jacobs of Brookside Press suggested. Actually, it was not my original title. I was going to call it Doorways or simply Doors. But one of his team members by the name of Mary saw the design, the initial design I had made for the cover. And she just said, why not adore a bell? So when Mr. Jacobs informed me of her suggestion, it sounded right to me. So I said, yes, that would be a lovely title.
It's a lovely title, and it's one that catches your attention, catches your eye. Talk to us a little bit about the early years of your poetry and how your poems reflect the influences of late romantic poets.
Well, I used to, as I've noted in the book's forward, I was very influenced by Christina Rossetti, Matthew Arnold, Gerard Manley Hopkins, and Christina Rossetti. And I think that rhythmically, and also as I was also singing at the time, and I do sing, my interior temperature was more, and is still to some extent, late 19th century. And in my versification, which is still in there, there's been changes, of course. Voices do change over a period of time. But I was influenced by these poets. I love to read them. William Butler Yeats to me was like the great Irish poet was probably the greatest poet in the English language in the 20th century. So I loved reading these poems, but I would read them. But did I ever take myself seriously as a poet? No. I was a writer of prose. I even tried my hand at writing plays. I worked as a journalist. And I admired the works of these poets. And probably unconsciously, I incorporated their stylistic influences into my own writing. But when I would finish writing a poem, I would just put it aside. I would put it somewhere and I would go on to writing a short story or a novel. Or I would be working at whatever I was working at. If I was a groundskeeper, I would be doing groundskeeping. It was just something that I would do. During a break, I might sit under a tree in the Audubon Park Riverview during my lunch break, and maybe I would scribble. But I would get back to work at what was considered real work.
Exactly. Always beware of what they say is a real job. They're not as fun as the unreal jobs, like being a poet, that's for sure. Let me ask you about your experience in New York, the events on 9/11, and how they shape your poetry.
The events of 9/11 signaled an end to that, especially in New York City, a city which always had this wonderful feeling of optimism about it. You know, when I went there in 1971, people were so helpful, they were so encouraging. And the message I got was, you can do it, you can make it. You're not from here, but you can make it. New Yorkers are like that, at least they were like that then, very encouraging and optimistic. And I think that 9/11, as an actor friend of mine said it, he put it very well. He said that the city has been psychically damaged by this event. And I remember Gordon said that. I'll never forget that he said this. And he said it will take some time for the city of New York to rebound from that deep psychic wound that was delivered that day. And so it ushered in a spirit. There were two kinds of spirits it ushered in, Mr. Crawford. First of all, on a brighter note, I did notice in the days after the Twin Towers fell, out on the street, people were showing more courtesy to each other, for at least for a few days. Excuse me. Oh, no, you can go ahead of me. Oh, no, you can have that seat. So New Yorkers are good-hearted. They're very big-hearted people, very loving people, but they're tough people. And they might appear to be very brusque and impersonal, but in that particular case in 9/11, there was a spirit within all of us asking this question: are these going to be our last moments on this earth? Are we only going to be around for a little while? What else is going to happen? And when people are pushed to that realization that it could be the end, that something worse could even happen, it puts them in a internal revolution of bringing out the best in them. And it's like what Dickens wrote in the beginning of A Tale of Two Cities. This was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And I think that what that did was that people were, at least during that first week, showing, how can I put, a little more humanity towards other people. but it was a short-lived experience because once the issues had been resolved about what caused it, what happened, um, and people began to process what had happened. There followed also on the darker side a suspicious nature, almost xenophobic, which you wouldn't associate with New York. New
Right.
York is the open city. It's where all are welcome, and so it ushered in a spirit of suspicion. It ushered in a spirit of fear that I did talk about in my poem, In the Shadow of Doomsday. And the thought that an unseen axe was kind of over one's head, or a sword of Damocles. There was that unconscious feeling when one would go take the subway to go to work, to go to school, or whatever. There was always that feeling that I'm wondering if something else is going to happen. When is the other shoe going to drop?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. You took the words right out of my mouth. Let me ask you this. What do you hope readers take away from your poetry?
You mean, what would I hope would come
Mhm.
from this?
What the readers will take away from it, what they'll learn about life, what they'll learn about nature, what they'll learn about love, what they'll learn about themselves, perhaps, by looking at your poetic words.
Well, I'm hoping, and this is the reason why I've had these put together, is that in reading these poems, number one, they will get a window into a historical, how what life was like in New York, for example, in 1972, in the subway system. You know, Liz turns 40, Nixon meets Mao, somebody's singing Where Are the Clowns? To give them a taste of the atmosphere of that time, 1972. Gosh, that's more than 50 years ago. Ooh.
Amazing.
Anyway,
It is.
but what I'm saying is to give them a taste of the atmosphere of that city, the thinking there, the attitudes. But in the other poems, poems that deal with relationships and with love, I my hope and prayer from these poems is that somebody, it might ring a bell with them. Now that's why the title Adora Bell that Mary suggested is such a great title, because you go through a doorway in life. We go through many, many doorways, seen in perspective. As we go through each doorway in life, new experiences, we have an epiphany, and it's like a bell goes off in us. We realize something new about ourselves. And I'm hoping and praying that those who read these poems, it will touch something in them that might illuminate what's right about their relationships with those they love, and maybe what's wrong with them and what they may need to do to correct them, to have a little bit more, to get away from that tyrant, which is also our greatest safeguard, ego. I mean, ego is can be our best friend, but it can also stand in the way of love and realizations, especially about other people and how other people feel.
Exactly. Very profound words indeed. The name of the book is Adore a Bell. Spanning over 40 years of his life, the author has an anthology here that takes readers on a journey through lyrical verses, heartfelt elegies, and reflections on time, art, and human connection. As you read this book, you will uncover profound themes and inspirations behind this extraordinary lifetime collection. Leland, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Well, thank you for inviting me. for listening to me, for allowing me to share this with other people.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And I understand you're very happy with folks at Bookside Press. You wanted to thank them as well?
Of course, Mary, I want to thank you for suggesting the title. I think that was brilliant of you. It also has a rather mellifluous ring to it, but it also captures the spirit of it. So I want to thank you, Mary. I want to thank Mr. Michael Jacobs, without whose energy, his high energy, he's very dynamic, his encouragement, his continually keeping after me about getting this out, and he did. I think that without Michael, I don't think this book would even be there, because I was dragging my heels about it. And I just want to thank people there such as Franco also, and all the members. Deanna Alberts, she and her team did a beautiful job on this book. They took a simple design I had made over 30 years ago, and they converted it into a cover that a friend in Georgia told me the other day. It knocked her socks off to see it. She said, it's such a beautiful cover. Deanna, thank you so much. Thanks to you and your team for your love, your time, your energy that you devoted to helping me get these poems out into the world where they can be enjoyed by other people. And God bless each and every one of you there.
Wonderful. Glad you had a great experience. We appreciate your time today. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time until next time on Spotlight.